Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel for the very first time, whichever it is for you. Today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Just a disclaimer, if you hear noises in the background, this is because it's Pride Month and I live like really close to one of the main streets that have all the gay bars in the city where I live at. So you can sort of imagine that it's kind of party central right now. It's always party central, but especially now it is the party central. But I'm not there. I am doing a review of The Cruel Prince that, to my knowledge, doesn't really have any LGBTQ characters in it, so maybe it's not the most fitting review of the season, but I'm gonna talk about it anyways because I've been putting it off for some time. One of the reasons why I've been putting it off is because this book kind of left me in a weird mood. It was just one of these books that I could not really, and this is not something that happens often, but it happened to me with The Cruel Prince. Usually when I read a book, I absolutely love it. I mean, there will be parts of it that I hate, or I just hate it. I'm like, this book is ridiculous. I'm wasting time reading it. When it comes to The Cruel Prince, it was so odd because I didn't hate it. I didn't explicitly love it. And I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, which I suppose means that I really enjoyed it in a way because I usually give 4 out of 5 only to books that I really liked. And The Cruel Prince is one of these books that you can't like call it downright problematic or, I mean, you know, Twilight-esque. I mean, the main protagonist, granted, she does make some odd quick transformations, and her mindset, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the decisions that she makes, but also I cannot really come up with any kind of alternative for her. So it kind of left me on the fence because I felt as if the main character, and this is one of the rare occasions when I read a book that the main character has a strong enough personality without being explicitly badass. It's more like her emotional and mental state that I feel as if there's not much I can offer. There's, like, you know, I don't facepalm myself. I just kind of feel as if I'm dealing with a person who really knows what they want. And this is one of these occasions. So this is not a spoiler-free review. In case you haven't read the book yet, all I can say is if you're looking for a fantasy that doesn't have any smut in it and has a relatively safe content, do read The Cruel Prince if you love fairies. It does have some sexual references, but there's kind of slight. It does have a suicide though. It does have some teen drinking. I think it's complicated because fairies, I don't really know how they age. But there is some teen drinking in this novel, so I mean, it's not overtly explicit, but I mean, maybe it is kind of. So if you're the kind of person who's uncomfortable with drinking, who's uncomfortable with sexual innuendos, maybe don't pick it up. Although I find it hard with YA to find something that's gonna be, especially fantasy, that's gonna be very clean. But, I mean, it's not Court of Thorns and Roses. So it's not as if you're gonna be reading it and thinking to yourself, oh my god, this is the light version of 50 Shades or something. So what is the premise? So basically, yeah, I said what I had to say. If you want to pick it up, you can stop watching right now. If you already read it or don't care for spoilers, you can definitely stick around and read some more. So, what is the Cruel Prince? What is the main idea behind it? Well, what I really liked about The Cruel Prince is that it starts off in the mortal world, which is really, really cool. So it's not set off in some, you know, the setting is not some made-up medieval land like in a lot of stories. The idea is that the human world and the fairy world are kind of parallel to each other, which basically means that there's a border between these worlds and it can be crossed by those who know how. And what I also really liked about it is this map. This map is just so adorable. I love maps in YA, but I don't love every single map. Some maps are just pretty blah. They're just kind of blandish and you get a feel of the land, but this is like so detailed. There's like a lot of cool little drawings and it's really detailed and it's really nice. I really wish that this kind of cool map thing would have translated into the story itself, because I don't feel as if the world building was as strong as I wish it would have been. I feel like there was a lot of potential for Holly Black to sort of develop that world and give me a more concrete feel of where I was, but she kind of didn't really do it. Also, I mean, these chapter headings, they're just so adorable. Honestly, this book is just filled with adorable things. So let's get into it. So like I said before, the book takes place, it starts off in a mortal world. And the main protagonist is a girl named Jude. I believe she's like 7 or 6 when this happens. So one day, this man comes into her house, murders her parents, and takes her twin sister and her half-sister away with him to this world called Fairy. So Fairy is a fairy world, and basically Jude has been struggling to fit in and struggling to survive basically from day one. Luckily for her, she has a lot of, well, she has not a lot, but she has some people who are rooting for her and sort of help her navigate everything that's been going on. But Jude is kind of a difficult kind of person. So she rarely opens up and talks about the things that have been going on with her. She rarely kind of talks about the bullying that she goes through. She kind of endures in silence. And I'm surprised that anyone can do it for so long from such an early age, because I just, you know, we all have been bullied at some point in our lives, and I cannot imagine what it's like to constantly, you know, just be in this hostile environment all the time, always be on your toes, always be afraid, always be wary. And it's not just, you know, cyberbullying, it's actual physical bullying, and it's magical kind of bullying, because she's vulnerable to glamour. And this is something that Jude, you know, kind of goes through. And it's interesting in this novel, though, that we never really know the experiences of her twin sister, because they're the same age and they essentially frequent the same places. But we are never told how her twin sister, whose name honestly I cannot pronounce, it's Tyrin, I don't know. I mean, we never really know what's going on in her head. And Jude never really says, like, she doesn't talk much about her past in the novel, which I think would have been helpful, because then it would have made me understand her more as a character. But she doesn't talk about the things that she went through as a child. She doesn't really go into too much detail, except for a few horrible things that happened. And her older sister, Vivi, is very likable. So she's half fairy, and she can't, like, help but want to return back to the mortal world. This is something that she wants more than anything. And her dad is the one who murdered Jude's parents, and he's a war general, so basically he's a very bloodthirsty, violent kind of person, but at the same time he has a very caring side, because he never hurt any member of his family, and he's protective of Jude and her sister, and he's protective of Vivi. But interestingly enough, he never, like, you know, hovers, and he never interferes too much with their lives. So he gives them a lot of freedom in a way. He doesn't, like, you know, force them into roles they don't want to play. He kind of has these expectations from his daughter Vivi, because she's his daughter, but he doesn't seem to hold the same expectations from Jude and her sister. He's kind of like, he gives them a very like free rein in a way, as long as they keep out of trouble. He doesn't seem to mind at all what they're doing. And he's remarried to this woman who doesn't like care too much about them. She just cares that they don't embarrass the family, because they are gentry, they are the royalty in a way, and she does want them to kind of not embarrass themselves and her and Maddox, the name of the father war general, in front of the court. And I thought that, you know, it's kind of sad, because when you don't have parents and the only people who sort of care for you are absent or don't really care that much, I mean, you can grow up to be a very, you know, complex, emotionally scarred person. And this is, I believe, what happens to Jude. But in order to really get that, you really have to read into her psychological state of mind, because the author did not elaborate exactly. And for that exact reason, that Jude is mortal, she's enlisted as an assassin to work for one of the royal princes as a spy. And she does this job so well. She's great at, she's a pretty good manipulator, she's a great liar, she's great at infiltrating all these courts, and she passes everywhere because she's a mortal, so people don't really suspect her that much, because mortals are used oftentimes as servants in the fairy world. And I mean, this was kind of hard for me to believe, that a teenager without prior experience would just make such an awesome spy. I mean, she does get some training, but it's not as if she's undergone years of training. She just goes through probably like several months of training, and already she's sent to her first assignment, you know, to retrieve some secret documents. And in my opinion, that was a little bit like, I mean, how believable is that? I mean, it's not impossible, unless the prince who hired her really doesn't care if she gets discovered and murdered or something. I have no idea. I think it's a very risky thing to do if you're planning a coup or whatever it is, if you're trying to steal some information to send, or you have to be really desperate to send this like teen who might or might not be a good kind of choice for the job. So anyways, Jude is doing quite well as a spy. That's probably her calling. She wanted to be a knight, but I guess being a spy is way better. And she kind of proves over and over again that a lot of the characters in this novel are morally ambiguous. And it's not as if it's not even made explicitly clear that they are. You just get the feeling as you read that no one is explicitly evil and no one is explicitly good. It's kind of like everyone is kind of neutral, everyone is kind of doing what they need to survive. Like, you have the sociopaths and you have the psychopaths, but they're kind of like, I think for the exception of one character who was really dumb and Jude kind of just murdered him, which was just kind of like, that was sort of my reaction when she just killed him. Everyone is like serving their interests, so it's all about kind of, you know, adjusting to the situation very quickly. And it seems like everyone is so apt at doing it, everyone is so great at just adjusting, that I was like, man, these people are amazing. They're not even people, they're fairy. But Jude picked up on their ways, that she's also so great at adjusting. And even her biggest tormentor, what's his name? Oh my god, I forgot, because I finished this book and I don't even remember his name. But he's the main guy who kind of bullies her, and you would expect there to be kind of like a love thing going on between them, but it doesn't. He's hot, and he's kind of like a bad boy kind of thing, and he's like, you know, he's like your stereotypical bad boy with a scarred past kind of thing. And he falls for Jude, and I mean, actually he doesn't fall for Jude, but you kind of think that he does, because he's doing a lot of favors and he's cooperating with her often, even though he kind of, you know, made her go through hell. But at the same time, he kind of like helps her out a bit, so you're wondering if he's, you know, pursuing his own weird motives, or he's or he has, he has this ulterior motive, so he's using her, to get to the final goal of whatever it is, or he feels bad about terrorizing her all these years, or he just himself doesn't really know what's gonna happen, so he's like, oh, I might cooperate for now because who knows what's gonna happen tomorrow. And a lot of the characters in the book are like that. They're very morally ambiguous. They, no one is explicitly anything. Everyone is like, has some sort of a agenda that they're trying to kind of serve, And Jude is like, she has her own agenda. She's tired of being powerless. She's tired of being pushed around and being being this ragdoll that anyone can do whatever they want to. And she kind of finds the strength and she finds the opportunity to finally do something about it. And that makes her very cool because honestly, like I said before, who wasn't bullied before? Who wasn't sort of pushed to the margins? I think all of us had that experience, and we probably all at one point really wanted to sort of, rise up and beat the crap out of that bully and, proving them that, we're not a pawn and we're not a victim. So Jude kind of definitely gets that opportunity in a very sort of accidental way, because the way that the book develops is that half the, 90% of the royal family is murdered, basically. The only guy left to rule is this psychopath who probably should not be king, and his brother, the hot guy, who Jude kind of crushes on, which is very odd. I found her crushing on him very strange, because I find it so hard to be sexually attracted to a person who or maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, we do have Christian Grey, and he's very messed up, and he's definitely the epitome of an unhealthy, emotionally unhealthy person who's emotionally unwell, and so many women are attracted to him. I mean, but this is the guy who really tormented her. It wasn't just this, cute little banters and occasional bullying. This was unadulterated bullying that he put her through, and she kisses him, and I was just what are you doing? What? Stop! And I have no idea if she was doing it to see if she can manipulate him somehow, or to see if he has feelings for her, that whole idea of if a boy terrorizes you, that means he likes you. I have no idea, but I was kind of grateful that there was no explicit love triangle in the story. There kind of was this one guy who I really hated so much. I just hated him. And he decided to play this weird game where essentially what he does is he's engaged to Jude's twin sister. But he kind of wants to have fun with both of them because, I don't know, why not? So what he does is that he hangs out with Jude, agrees to marry her twin sister, and he's just well, if you really love me, you'll let me do whatever I want to do. And I'm what? That's just so messed up. Even for a fairy, that is messed up. But he gets away with it, surprisingly. Jude really hates him, but she vents out at her sister. Instead of, she basically challenges her twin sister to a duel over this ridiculous guy who's just a Nancy pants. And instead of, if she's really angry, she could have, basically shoved his face into the dirt and made him eat donkey shit. But instead, she kind of challenges her sister, who's not even, the one behind it. She just kind of goes along with what he says because she wants to get married and she wants to be a lady of the court. And she sees that as her only way in. And sure, she kind of sacrifices her sister for it. But, she's not the one who comes up with this idea. It's this guy, Locke. And it just infuriated me that Jude vents out on her sister instead of venting out on this guy. And when she sees him, she's still oh man, I wish you would have picked me instead. And I'm are you for real? Are you for real? You can hate your sister for, being okay with whatever this guy did to you. You can, hate her from here to oblivion. But don't, vent out your biggest anger and frustration on her, because she's just a pawn, just like you. you know, but whatever, I guess it happens to people all the time, that they, you know, always lash out on the person who deserves it less. And a plot twist is that Jude's brother is actually one of the remaining royal heirs, and he crowns the bully guy whose name I don't remember. Let me find it. Oh god, this is embarrassing. Oh god, what is his name? What is his name? Ooh. Jesus. He has a really, he has a name that's not easy to forget, and I cannot find it. Cardan, that's his name. His name is Cardan, Sardan. I don't know, Sardan, I would like to think, but it's with a C. Sardan. I don't know, Sardine. Let's call him Sardine from now on. So, Sardine is crowned as the Prince of Fairy, as the King of Fairy, and Sardine kind of... I'm sorry, this is too good. He should have been named Sardine. And he's the King of Fairy. And Jude is kind of like the puppeteer, because Sardine made an oath to serve Jude for a year. I don't know why he made that oath. Again, I just feel like he's this helpless little boy who doesn't really know what to do with himself. So he just sticks to the person who seems the most sane in the current situation. So that's what happens. And Jude kind of gets her crown, although it's not really her crown and it's not her throne, but she kind of rules it from the shadows. She kind of sits in it, in the shadows. I think that the only character that I really liked in that story was Maddox, the stepdad, the vicious stepdad. I think I liked him the most because he knew what he was, and he knew who he is, from the get-go. He never, was ambiguous, and he never tried to sort of be well, I don't really want to do it, but might as well do it. He was a murdering psychopath from the start. And he's very honest about it. He's not trying to be yeah, well, I wish I didn't have to, put that sword through your chest, but I must. He's yeah, I'll do it. I don't mind. It's all good. So I really liked him. I thought that he was great. It was also interesting that he sort of was really helpful towards Jude, and when she gets home after something that's very similar to a sexual assault, he actually kind of cares about her, and he actually who did this? I'm gonna tear them to shreds. So he's very angry, and he's also very defensive and protective of his family, which I really appreciated, because he seems to be the only person in the story who really has it together. He never sort of doubts his nature. He never questions his nature and his desires. He's very certain. And even if it's not a good kind of, he doesn't really serve a good purpose, he's just so sure of himself, and I think that that's what makes him so goddamn likable, that he's just I know what I'm gonna do, I know what I need to do, and I like doing what I'm doing. He even says it, I love shedding blood, I love starting wars, I love conquering, and I'm this is amazing. He's so good, because he's not a hypocrite, he's not playing any games, he's super explicit about it, and that made him so goddamn awesome, and I hope he's not gonna die. I don't know how many books Holly Black plans on writing in this series, but I genuinely hope that he will survive all of them. Also, I don't know what the relationship is gonna be between Sardine and I cannot help but laugh. Sardine and oh god, and Jude. I don't really root for a romance. I think it's gonna be very awkward and weird if something does start out between them, but I might end up liking it because this whole book is a little bit weird and a little different from what I'm used to. If you're looking for like I said, a Court of Thorns and Roses kind of read, or a Throne of Glass or whatever, this is not it. This is definitely not it. At times it felt a little bit more juvenile read, kind of aimed at like 12, 10-year-olds, and then like bam, someone like gets stabbed with a sword and it goes through their like chest cavity, and I'm like, but yeah, this is my thoughts on The Cruel Prince. I know that a lot of people said that this book is overhyped. I don't know if it's overhyped. It's so hard for me to just have concrete feelings about this book. I cannot explicitly say I love it. I cannot explicitly say I hate it. I gave it a high rating, maybe because I was under some sort of a glamour when it was happening. The fairies got me or something. But I mean, I liked it. Maybe I liked it especially because it's different, because there's no dramatic love triangles, because the story focuses on this girl who's tired of being bullied and who does something about it, which is admirable. The only one thing that I really thought was a bad thing to have in the book is the fact that Jude never really talks to anyone about what she goes through. She kind of talks about it, but she opts for clamming up. And I feel as if young readers who read it think that this is the way to go about things, that if you're bullied, if you're like targeted by bullies, the best thing to do is to sort of, keep things to yourself and, seek out your revenge in secret and one day like rise up. I think that I get it. I think it's hard talking about being bullied. It's hard to admit that you were bullied because it kind of makes you look weak. It's embarrassing. Sometimes the bullies do really embarrassing things to you and you just don't want to admit it. And you also don't want to evoke the wrath of your teachers or of the adults or your siblings. You don't want this war to start on your behalf because you just want to keep everything on the DL, And I get it. But I also think that it's a very unhealthy kind of thing to do. And I know that if Jude would have talked to Maddox about it, there probably wouldn't the book probably would have had a different kind of plot line. But I also I think it was upsetting to read about it because this, it just resonates so much with real life that you're like, how many kids are gonna read this and think to themselves, yeah, I have these bullies, they bully me, I might as well torch their bikes, I don't know, whatever, instead of talking to someone about it. So I'm not 100% sure what is the right way. I just don't think the right thing, I mean, even in terms of maybe, even if you don't want teachers or parents to intervene and you want to solve this between you and the bully, I still think it's healthy when you actually do talk to someone about problems, because if you don't, things are just gonna build up and faster inside you, and then it's just gonna be, you're gonna be hurt even more because you keep everything to yourself. And I think that Jude was pretending for such a long time that she is strong or indifferent, that she actually became a bit of a husk of a human being in a way, because she was suffering in silence and shutting down all these feelings of weakness that she might have been experiencing, that she actually became a bit robotic in a way, and a bit sort of live by the sword, die by the sword kind of person, which is admirable but also probably unhealthy. And I also feel as if she's gonna have a major breakdown at some point because of it, because it's all gonna just pop like a zit. So that's probably one of my biggest issues with The Cruel Prince. But I just might be reading way too much into it. So anyways, thank you for sticking around. I do recommend this book. I do think that it's enjoyable. I do think that it's worth giving a read. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to continue reading it. Maybe now that I'm thinking about it, if I replace Cardan's name with Sardine, it actually might be really good, like The Adventures of Jude and Sardine. I think that will be pretty amazing. Alright, y'all. Have a good night, good day, good afternoon, good evening. Bye!